And the number one issue I have found which causes people financial anxiety is that they don't know their numbers. Now, what do I mean by that?
Welcome to the Wealth Conversation podcast. In this episode, I will be talking with Norma Cassius. She has worked in the financial services sector in the UK for over 20 years and is an accredited psychotherapist. Norma is the founder and CEO of Think Like a Bank and an author of a self-help money management book of the same name, Think Like a Bank. She specializes in combining financial education with the psychology of money and is on a mission to financially educate and psychologically empower over 1 million people globally by 2034. Welcome, Norma, to the Wealth Conversation podcast.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's so good to have you here on the podcast. Finally, I've been wanting to speak to you for a very long time since we actually met the first time. Please, could you share with the listeners who you are, what you do, and what your passion is?
So I'm Norma Cassius. I'm a money management and mental health consultant. I worked within the financial industry for over 20 years. And then whilst my children were growing up, I then decided to do something that was more meaningful. And so in church, I started to do some online counselling. I really enjoyed it. And, people was really benefiting from that. And somebody suggested that for me to take it up as a profession. I looked into it. And nearly 2 decades later, I've been a qualified psychotherapist. And the reason why I've combined my business model of money and mental health is because at one point in my life, I was a single mother with 3 children aged 6 years and under. When I became a single mother, I had a mortgage to pay, a car to run, all on a part-time salary. And so I had to make it work. I really had to make ends meet, which I did. And to the point where I was able to fly my children out every year with my annual bonus from the bank and on a part-time salary. And my colleagues used to say, Norma, how are you doing this? And it's really about, it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have. From my banking environment, I learned money management practices and I was able to navigate my way through my finances. But, there were times when I did really experience a lot of financial anxiety because of that. I used to shop in about 4 supermarkets every week to make ends meet. I used to go shopping with my children. And sometimes I used to say to my children, look, I've forgotten something. We need to go back. And they used to be, oh, mummy, I don't want to go back. But it wasn't because I forgot something. It was because I saw something 5 or 10 pence cheaper that I went back to the soup to make sure that I was able to provide for them to meet all of their needs. So if it meant walking right down, the end of the road to back to a shop to get something to make sure I met all of our needs. And so, the anxiety and the stress that I experienced. And, for me, for people that don't have the financial background or parents that were able to teach them, knowingly or unknowingly, their money management practices, I know the challenges they face, both financially and psychologically and emotionally. So that's why I'm so passionate about money and mental health.
That's amazing, Norma. And I think your story, even though it was several years ago, probably resonates with a lot of people today because of the cost of living crisis. But we'll get to that because I want to unpack what you're seeing now with this cost of living crisis. But psychotherapy, you've worked in financial services, you're combining the two to help people. What are you seeing, or what do you know through your profession and being on both sides of the fence, as it were? How does money management and mental well-being sort of link together?
So basically, I guess, as I was saying, like, people are not really financially educated. So when it comes to their money and managing it and knowing how to manage it or not knowing how to manage it, where have we learned our money management practices from? It could be a combination of things, whether it's from your home environment, if it's from your own experiences, your culture, your religion, wherever you've learned your money management practices from. A lot of the times they don't serve us the best way they should. because obviously we've not been educated in regards to our finances. So then when financial situations happen, for example, an unexpected job loss, it could be somebody falling ill, it could be a relationship breakdown, your car breakdown, anything that happens out of the extraordinary. How does that affect you? Do you know what I mean? Initially people feel stressed and anxious, especially if they're struggling with their finances. Automatically it starts affecting your emotions, first of all, and then psychologically it's like, your beliefs, your thoughts, your attitudes towards your money, all of that combined, for people it's very, very overwhelming, because we've not been taught about solutions in finances. So we've had to navigate through these situations the best way we can. And for a lot of people, they don't know how to do it. And a lot of anxiety around that is the not knowing what to do and how to do it. That in itself will cause financial anxiety, a sense of hopelessness, a sense of helplessness, depression. All of those issues can derive from not knowing how to manage your money and understanding your money.
That's so true. I mean, I think back to when I moved to this country and I suddenly got myself into a lot of debt. I was thinking about all the things that could happen, all the negative things. And as you say, I didn't have the solutions, right? And because I didn't have the solution, I felt like there was no light basically at the end of the tunnel. And, I like the fact that you've touched on how our brains can create all sorts of scenarios over and over again, which cause that anxiety. And sometimes you don't know it's happening, right? Until maybe it's too late. Are there any sort of situations that you're seeing that are causing people a lot more anxiety nowadays than previously?
Absolutely. The cost of living crisis, it's just out of our control. I mean, I don't know about you, where you live, but where I live, every time I go into one of the main supermarkets, the price is not the same. It's gone up. And I really feel it for people with children and families, especially in like holidays. I mean, everything literally has gone up except for our salaries. And if our salaries have gone up, it's not in line with, do you know what I mean, the cost of living. People are so, so anxious. It just seems like it's a hopeless situation, because although inflation has gone down, I mean, I'm still going to the supermarket and the prices are still going up. So I don't know when that is going to even itself out and help us as consumers. Do you know what I mean? To be able to navigate our way through this situation that, it's affecting everybody, regardless of where you are on the economic scale.
Yeah, that is so true. I've seen that as well. I've got the privilege of in my 9 to 5 working with high net worth individuals, and it's been an eye opener because sometimes you think certain parts of the community or the country or society are immune to things like cost of living crisis, but what we've seen is everyone's energy bills has gone up. I've seen parents having to support their children, who are adults with their own children, to pay the mortgage or even pay off the mortgage because of high interest rates. And it's causing all sorts of emotional and I guess mental anxiety across society.
Absolutely. Right now, we're seeing middle class people having to access food banks. So, how do you think that makes them feel psychologically, emotionally? Do you know what I mean? The feelings of embarrassment, shame. They're not able to provide in the way that they used to be able to provide. Interest rates have gone up, which has caused people's mortgages to go up by hundreds of pounds, regardless if you're on benefits or you're, working in a high net salary. It is really impacting people. And I found that people that, because my private practice is in Harley Street, people that earn high net salaries, they are the people that, if I think it's best for people that don't have much to, although it's not nice, but have that struggle. Then for people that have that money and lose it, or the fear of losing it, or not being able to maintain the lifestyle, the private schools, that the top of the range car, the £1 million or multi-million-pound houses that they're living in, the weekly shopping in Selfridges and Harrods, to change that lifestyle, the embarrassment, the shame, and all, because they have that image. Those are the most likely suicidal clients. And it's so much work for me as a psychotherapist in the work that I have to do with them, because sometimes they are so mentally challenged because of their financial situation. We can't even address the financial situation when I first start working with them. I have to be working with their mental health, because I need them to, obviously, I need to be able to ground them and to be able to contain them, for them to, because I mean, their head is so full with all what's going on. There's no capacity for to try and work. Obviously, to work with your finances, you have to be in a relatively stable emotional state, because it's very overwhelming.
I mean, that's so interesting, Norma, because actually one of the things I've been thinking about is the difference in the impact on mental well-being that money has across the different socioeconomic communities, the different genders, and maybe different people. And you've touched on it across the board, that it seems like sometimes those who have more to lose are impacted much more. But another thing that's come to my mind is, then, do you find that because of that equation, that people who may perceive themselves to have less don't strive to have more when it could be beneficial to them? And by that, I mean, I'm not talking about earning millions or making millions, but just trying to work to get more so that they're able to have a relatively comfortable lifestyle.
I think the cost of living crisis for people has been a rude awakening for a lot of people. I've experienced that a lot of people on lower incomes have become quite resourceful. For example, they're doing things like renting out a room, selling clothes on like vintage and things, looking for a side hustle, working with their children. Because I mean, this internet online business, it's the young people can just tap in and sort of, set up a business in no time. For the older people, it's a bit more challenging. So, and I've suggested some of these things for the clients that I work with, and they've taken it on board. So it's not that they're sitting there and thinking, oh, there's nothing I can do. I'm in, because I'm all about financial empowerment. As long as there's life, there's hope, right? If you're unhappy where you are, there's work to be done and there's money to be earned.
That's so reassuring. And I think hopefully listeners will be encouraged by that. It's one of those things, when life gives you lemons, make lemonade, right?
I mean, and they're so happy with themselves that, taking themselves out of the box and that tunnel vision, thinking, I've just not got enough. You can make some things happen.
Yeah. And there's a lot of people doing that. A lot of the time you're not reinventing the wheel. You're just doing something a bit better, or solving a problem for a community that is underserved, right?
Absolutely. I mean, I go to church, and so I do some talks in church about this. And there's so much help out there. It's just that it's not advertised and people don't know. For example, school uniform. There's a school uniform site that you can go on, and I can give you that detail for people struggling. Because school, I remember for myself as a single parent, that was such a challenging time for me. The school holidays, and I needed to replenish their school uniform. So there's sites that people can go on where you can donate. Some people have like new shirts and new jumpers that their children have not worn, or relatively new. People can swap things, or, get some new things that are, really dirt cheap. So there's ways that we can help one another within the community. You're not alone. You're really not alone. It's just about seeking that help, or knowing even where to go to get that help.
That's so true. Now, talking about helping people, I'd love to know how you help your clients manage their mental well-being and their money as well.
First of all, I've got to address their mental well-being and look at where it's at. Do you know what I mean? Because a lot of the times they're so overwhelmed that they can't think straight. So the decisions they're making are not the best for them. So they're plunging further and further into debt. So it's understanding their psychology of money, because we all have a psychology of money. What that means is it's understanding your beliefs, your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions about money. Because like a couple could get together and, they've come from two different walks of life. And so it's understanding each other's psychology of money. You need to understand what your triggers are. So it's helping people understand all of these things, which then sets a platform for understanding their finances. So once I've worked with like their mental health and the triggers that make them feel stressed and anxious, once I've helped them understand what they are, then we start looking at their level of financial education, financial literacy. And the number one issue I have found which causes people financial anxiety is that they don't know their numbers. Now, what do I mean by that? People say budget in, budget in, budget in. People have that number at the back of their head, how much they spend on shopping, how much they spend on their bills, socializing. They don't have the concrete figures. Now, I run a financial boot camp and I ask people to send me their income and expenditure before we start the boot camp. So we're ready to go. And when we start the boot camp, because budgeting is a skill and it's a technique, it's layered. Once we start going through the layers, they find that they're hundreds of pounds out. Now, I give this analogy. So, for example, if you was going on a car journey with your friends and it was like a long haul journey and it was across motorways and your petrol gauge in your car didn't work, you told your friends this, what impact do you think that would have on your friends on that journey?
That is a very interesting question and analogy. I mean, yeah, the impact it would have on my friend is they'd be quite nervous and most probably they might actually pull out. And I think there might be some trust issues after that journey.
Absolutely. So they're going on this journey. The petrol gauge doesn't work. So we don't know when we're going to need to top up. And we don't know if it's going to get us to our destination. So with that information, that's just going to cause financial anxiety. That's going to cause anxiety. Yeah. That same journey, but the petrol gauge is working. Everybody's got financial peace. You've got nothing to worry about. Because you know exactly when the petrol gauge is running down, you know when you will need to top up. You've got no fear of running out because you're in control now. And that's the difference between knowing your numbers and not knowing your numbers. When you know exactly what you're working with, you are in control.
It's so interesting, Norma, because I find that, and even me before, this was a scenario before I got all this knowledge, that people put a lot of effort in things like planning a holiday, even just planning the commute to work, right? Are the trains running? If they're not, do I need to leave a bit earlier? Or what alternative routes can I have? But when it comes to money, we don't have that same level of detail or wanting to plan. And I'd be interested to know is there a sort of common reason for it, or is it just fear of the unknown? Because as you said, we haven't been taught this stuff, so it seems quite foreign.
We don't have that level of awareness. It's just been blotted out almost. Our journey to work, we give that some regard. What we're going to eat, we give that some regard. We're planning a holiday, we give that some regard. If we could put that planning into planning our weekly budget, there'll be 80% less people in debt for sure. We don't think about money in that way. We just use it as a tool, but we don't have that regard for money. And that is the truth. If the truth be told, that's exactly what it is. We don't give it the reverence and the respect it needs.
It's true, because it weaves through everything in our lives, doesn't it?
Our relationship with money. When I say to people, do you understand your relationship with money? People look at me like I'm blue. When you think about a relationship with money, think about a relationship in general. What is the content of a relationship? A healthy relationship. It's trust, isn't it? It's respect. It's reverence. Do you know what I mean? I've worked with a guy that took his girlfriend to Paris for the lunch. Do you know what I mean? Flew her to Paris for lunch. And then he's broke and he can't understand what's happening with his money. Because he's not sat down and planned whatever. He just thought feelings, because money is quite emotional. He just thought about doing something nice for his girlfriend, not thinking about the consequences, not thinking about you've got it on a card with a 18.9 APR and it's plunging you further into debt. He's not respecting his money. He's not giving his money any regard. So his money's not going to serve him. It's not going to respect him. What you abuse, you lose.
I love it. You've touched on a very, very good point about, respecting the money, giving it reverence. We've also said it weaves through everything, so it should be on the top of the list when we're planning. I'd love you to share what the results have been when, you've taken your clients through that journey of understanding their relationship with money, unpicking those issues that they've carried with them for so many years that are impacting how they view themselves and money and the mental anxiety around money. What are the transformations that people go through when they've gone through that process?
It's like a metamorphosis transformation from the caterpillar to the butterfly. They start off in a place of not knowing their psychology of money, not understanding their psychology of money, not understanding their beliefs, their thought patterns, their triggers. They have no awareness about that. And so just exploring that with them, just, asking them, there was one client that I worked with when I asked him about his relationship with money. And basically what happened is his mum used to give them their dinner and then lock the kitchen door. And then in the morning, he said, he used to go to school hungry. So I don't know if she didn't open it to give them breakfast. But he was so angry with his mum for doing that to him. And as a result, he now just spends money because he's got it and he'll buy food and buy whatever he wants, whenever he wants. That's financial trauma. And I started to ask him some questions. It's like, have you had a conversation with your mum about why she did that? He said no. He was so angry. And to this day, he's so angry. Well, he was, till then. That could be what had happened to your mum. And a lot of his learnt behavior, she probably thought that's the way she can preserve the food. And how's that going to work if he's just going to be spending money left, right and centre because of the trauma he's experienced? So we worked through all of that until we got to a place where he was able to speak to his mum, and he did find out that did happen to her. That's what she experienced. So that's what she knew to do. That was her way of managing what they had. And then we had to work on forgiveness. So taking them through all of that and then teaching him how to budget and, because he was just spending whatever you do with your card, you just keep swiping it. But let's put a structure and a strategy in place. So at the end of it, my clients are able to understand their relationship with money. And a lot of them have to unlearn certain mindsets and behaviors and beliefs and learn new healthy mindsets and beliefs.
I love that story. Thank you for sharing that with us. That's such an amazing transformation. As you were talking, I was like, did he actually speak to his mother in the end? And he did. Wow.
He did. He did. He was able to then start rebuilding a relationship with his mum because he didn't have that. There was no relationship. So it just has a knock-on effect in many areas of your life and for whoever's in your environment.
That's so true. That's so true. It weaves through everything. Do we all need to have financial therapy?
I think therapy in itself is healthy for everybody at some stage in our lives. And it just depends where you are with your finances. If it's causing you a problem, if it's causing you worry, stress and anxiety, then I believe you need some therapeutic intervention. It may not be a whole lot, but just to help you understand what your money means to you and how it's affecting you.
Yeah, I think a lot of us understand that our behaviors, as you've said, are learnt. They come from how we've interpreted other people's actions. For example, the story of your client and his mother locking the door. I do have, I guess I'd say, my own financial trauma, which stemmed from when my parents passed away when I was very young. And so that led me to later on, when I was an adult, to kind of assume that anything good that happened to me would be taken away. So if I got what I thought was lots of money at the time, I'd give it away. Or I'd buy stuff for my sisters or whatever. My husband is the one who holds on to money. Yeah, I'm more the cash on hand all the time. I want to be very liquid so I can move quickly. Yeah, there's probably a session in that. So I might have to come and see you to unpack that actually, Norma.
Sure.
I'd be interested to know, Norma, if there are 2 or 3 things that you suggest that we do in our communities to support each other when it comes to money and mental well-being.
I think it's about having conversations. in our community, because money is such a sensitive issue. It's such a private thing, and people don't want to talk about it because of status or being judged, whatever, But I think that, people have got WhatsApp groups for this, that, and the other. Why not talk about? I mean, we're living in the cost of living crisis, right? So if there's a time to talk about money because it's affecting us all, do you know what I mean? You're justified to without really being judged, because it is affecting people in so many ways. And I say to people every time I get like a deal, I've got a Costco's card, and you get an extra one. So share that with somebody, give it to somebody. If there's a deal at a supermarket, you got WhatsApp groups. Look, Tesco's is doing da da da, just to get the ball rolling, just to start to help people feel comfortable about talking and sharing, because there's so many people suffering in silence, especially in our community, because it's about, don't chat your business to anybody. That's the kind of culture that we come from. Don't let anybody know that you're not able to make ends meet or whatever. And people go to bed with not being able to sleep at night. But we need to be able to open up. As I said, we're living in a cost of living crisis, and there's no shame in if you can't pay your bills, because there's help out there. And I've done a podcast before, and I just shared, and it just helps so many people. So there's a government scheme called Breathing Space. Basically, what that is, it's for people that are in debt. So there's different places that help with debt, like the National Debt Line, Christians in Poverty, Step Change. There's quite a few agencies that are free that help people that are in debt. Now, you need to access one of those agencies, and once you do, they can then help you be eligible for Breathing Space. And what Breathing Space does, they contact all your creditors. You get 6 months of Breathing Space for one of those agencies that you contact, help you sort out your money and help you set up a financial plan. If you have mental health issues, it's not 6 months, it's for as long as you've got these issues.
I'll definitely make sure the links to those organizations are in the show notes. And is there anything else that you would like to highlight for people?
I would say, helping one another. Sometimes you may know of a family a couple of doors down, or a family that that are struggling with food. If you've got a bit more, and there's a lot of people, they say, going to bed hungry, and children going to bed hungry. I was talking about before, my other podcast, where when occasionally we ran out of juice, my mum would make sugar and water. That would be our drink. Do you know what I mean? And so we now had to fry dumplings, a bit of flour and sugar and knead that, and that's a fried dumpling. We know how to make it work. I would say, you've got some fresh juice, fizzy water, what, put that together, tango. It's about being resourceful with what you've got. You've got one egg and a bit of bread, French toast.
And you can make a couple with the one egg, right?
You can, absolutely. And I'm thinking, as long as you've got the staple food in your house, you can get, like in Tesco's, a 5 kilo bag of rice for like £6 or £7. And, get a bag of pasta. Once you've got that, might not have much, but you've got pasta, a bit of butter. At least it stops you from going to bed hungry.
I think the message is clear. It is about community and looking out for one another. I feel like we've been sort of pushed into a society where we think about ourselves and no one else. And it wasn't like that before. The communities were much stronger. So I think we definitely need to come together.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
The one thing that I've been trying to remind myself to ask you is think like a bank. Can we just talk about that quickly? The name, I know it's the title of a book. What is Think Like a Bank all about?
Okay, so Think Like a Bank is basically when I was working in the bank and I was seeing how much money they was making from people like you and I, interest charges and the products that they sold us. I thought I could do that for myself. So said, so done. And I was able to get a 0% credit card, and I was able to use the bank's money like they use ours. If you put £2,000 in a bank account, in a savings account, you're getting like 0% or 1% or 2%. I mean, interest rates. You borrow that same amount of money on a credit card, they're charging you 18.9%. A lot of people don't even know what APR is, so they don't know what they're doing. So they're getting themselves in so much debt. So I live my life by a 0% credit card. Yeah, I'm thinking like a bank. The bank's number one goal is to make a profit. So my number one goal is to use the bank's money to buy what I need. And I've got the leisure of paying it back within the agreed time scale without disturbing my savings plan and whatever. I'm factoring everything into my budget. But, as I said, I don't have to borrow from Peter or Sally or whatever. And people say, Norma, but, I don't want to get myself in debt. Da, 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 da. Let me tell you, the wealthy people know how to utilize credit. There's this self-made multimillionaire called Kevin Green. I think the last I heard he was worth about 66 million. And he said he used his 0% credit card and all his points to fly out first class to Australia in a top hotel and everything. Now you're thinking this man's got 66 million. Why would he need to be using the bank's money? Because the rich know how to utilize their money and make it work for them.
Think like a bank. I mean, it's so clever. You mentioned APR. Can you just break that down for people who are listening and don't know exactly what that is?
So that's the annual percentage rate. So that's what if you take out anything on credit, the bank will charge you an annual percentage rate. So for example, if you take out a credit card and it has an annual percentage rate of 18.9%, that's what you're going to be paying over the period of the time that you're using your credit card. So that's what it is. The interest that they're charging you, 18.9% of interest on whatever money you use from that product. So if you use the whole of the £2,000, you'll be paying 18.9% of interest on £2,000.
And the longer you take to pay it off, the interest is being calculated on what you borrowed plus the interest that's added on, right?
So the interest is being compounding. It's just adding on and adding on every month. And this is what overwhelms people. They don't understand about just paying the minimum interest and they think they're paying something. It's only the minimum interest. I'm thinking, why is my balance not going down? It's not touching the balance. You're just paying that interest for that month. And then it's just compounding. It's growing. You're adding more and more every month onto your balance.
That's one thing I didn't understand several decades ago, because you see that minimum payment and you think, oh yeah, that's easy. I'll just pay. But, the fine print, because when you get a credit card or take out a loan, you're given a whole long document with no one reads it. I just look for the figures and it's, and also I think it's pretty reasonable, when you do apply for any finance, you're sort of thinking to yourself, well, this is my situation now, and actually I'll be able to pay this off in X number of months. But we never put a contingency in the plan for things to go wrong. And I believe that's where we get caught out sometimes.
Absolutely. And I say to people, if you've got a credit card that's not 0%, would you go into a shop with a £20 note and buy something for £10 and say to the shopkeeper, keep the change? No, you wouldn't. But that's exactly what you're doing. If you're using your credit card each month and you're not paying it off, you're giving the bank this extra money that you should have in your pocket. You can't be giving them a penny.
You've said it. I can't add to that. That's so true. Yeah. No, I wouldn't tell them to keep the change. No.
Absolutely. But when you're using a credit card with an annual percentage rate on it and you're not clearing that balance every month, you're then giving the bank hard-earned cash.
I feel like there's a whole podcast episode around credit and interest rates and how to manage them. Thank you so much, Norma, for all those gems and sound bites. There's so many in there. I might actually do a competition as to how many people can find in there. And then they could, because they're also very useful and they stick right in your mind. How can people get hold of you if they want to access your services or maybe work with you in whatever capacity?
I'm on Instagram. It's think.like.a.bank. That's my Instagram handle. Or just Google me, normacassius.com, and everything about me comes up.
I'll put a link to your Instagram page in the show notes and also your website. Final question before we wrap up, Norma. what is the one wealth conversation you would like listeners to have?
That question would be is, have you thought about generational wealth? Is there a plan in place? And have you started to work on it? A lot of people live in the here and now. Do you know what I mean? Generational wealth is exactly what it is. I'm part of the Windrush generation. My parents were the Windrush generation. So I'm the first sort of like generation from that. There was no generational wealth. Our parents came with all they had. And so but I'm now put things in place for my children and my grandchildren. So what are you putting in place for the next generation?
I love that. I love that. And just tying it in with mental well-being, it sets the next generation up, to...
They've got a stepping stone to start them off.
Yeah. And I think for a lot of communities, that's where the stress comes in, where we're starting from zero. But if you are not preparing for the next generation or thinking about generational wealth, it's possible that the next generation will be starting from -10.
Absolutely, they will be. That is something that should be at the top of our list and within our budget with what we're doing, our investments.
I love that. I love that. I think that is a perfect place to end. Thank you so much, Norma.
You're welcome.
Thank you for listening to this amazing discussion with Norma. I have learned so much from her and taken away so many sound bites, which will definitely help me on my financial journey. I love that she's talked about generational wealth and how we can all work as a community to support each other during the good times and the not so good times. And she's reminded us that we are not alone when we're going through financial difficulties. There is help out there. I would love for you to share with me what has resonated with you the most during this discussion. So please send me an email at info@thewealthconversation.com, or you can contact me on Facebook, Instagram at The Wealth Conversation, or on LinkedIn. Look for me, Tsitsi Mutiti, Chartered FCSI. Until next time, stay wealthy in mind and spirit.